Located in the town of Elberta on US Highway 98, the Baldwin County Heritage Museum remains Baldwin County's public museum, with a singular focus on Baldwin County's past. Boasting impressive collections of farm machinery, tools, period clothing, and historic school, home, office, and religious artifacts, the museum offers all visitors a glimpse into the county's rich past. Open free to the public, with doors open Wednesday through Saturday from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. The museum's many collections serve as an enjoyable and lasting reminder of all the peoples who settled and built Baldwin County.
The building of this museum came about in this way. In 1979, Alberta had the Diamond Jubilee, and some farmers either coincidentally or accidentally had old farm machinery on display for the occasion. That gave the visitors, particularly the South Baldwin Chamber of Commerce and the county extension agent and home demonstration agent, the idea, wouldn't it be nice if we could establish a museum in the area? That started the ball rolling. We had local meetings from 1979 in various places here. Our neighbor gave us 5 acres of land on which to establish a museum. By 1981, we dedicated the grounds and started a building program. On the 31st of October 1987, we were able to open the doors of our museum, the first building to the public.
This museum is unique in the county. It has many displays of interest, military displays, as well as displays which highlight how the life was maybe of your grandparents or your parents back in those days of the 20s and 30s and so forth, how people lived, and also how difficult at times it was to just operate a homestead. So this is a representation of all those things that people grew up with back in the turn of the century that we want to preserve for our children and their children, and have them have an understanding of the roots that are involved in Baldwin County. We have children that come here from the schools, and we invite all of these school children here during the year to come and see the displays so they can understand how their parents and grandparents lived back in the days when they were young children or young adults. It's interesting from the aspect that we also have a blacksmith shop, and we have a shop for farm equipment. We have plans to expand the museum, to put in a general store, and also to put in an old-time gas station. So that would be something that would be of interest in the future. But what's interesting, and I find interesting about the museum, is the spirit behind those that are involved, because it's a total voluntary organization. We have 1 paid employee, and we can only open up 4 days a week right now because finances only allow for those days in which the museum stays open. But we are always looking for volunteers. We need people to come in here and with ideas to help us better the museum. But it's a great experience for those who've never seen a heritage museum. And in some of the machinery here we have in the Haupt building is unique, and the displays in here that you see, you'll never see those again because of how fast technology is happening, as everyone knows. Here we have a military display that basically highlights World War II uniforms and equipment. We have a 1923 a living room display which highlights those things that were popular back in the 1930s and when your parents were young people. We have a player piano that operates and plays, and we have a Victrola that operates and plays, and we do that for the school children that come through here on tours. We have displays of cameras and also a display of early buildings in Alberta. Here we have various wardrobe ensembles, dresses that date back to early part of the century, and also you can see how people dressed at that time. So all I can say is that we want you to come and see the museum. We want your children to come. We will be happy to take tours through the museum. If there are questions, we have people here that can answer those questions. But certainly it's a well worthwhile endeavor just to visit this museum. And certainly if we can get volunteers and help and contributions to make this a better place, we would thank anybody for that effort.
We have many, many artifacts here. We have women's clothing from the turn of the century. We have some very neat looking bathing suits that men wore that probably wouldn't be caught dead in now. Over here we have the dress that came over on the Carpathia, which is the sister ship to the Titanic. The Carpathia rescued over 600 people from the Titanic. So it's kind of a neat little addition to our museum. We also have some quilts that were made by women in the area from a home demonstration club. It was an arts and crafts. And these quilts actually went over to England for display over there. So they've kind of been around the world. We have other quilts. We have quilt racks that people actually made their quilts, homemade ones. We have a wonderful little player piano that I love to play when somebody comes, especially the children, because they just are enthralled by it.
This is one of the churches that we find in the new settlement of Elberta, Alabama. It was established in 1908. In fact, this is one of the organs, or the organ that was used in that church. And fortunately, we had some people who could always play the organ, even though some left and some died, but there was always someone else that could take their place. Most of the settlers came from the Nebraska-Wisconsin area, and so they established the church, which was then used as a school also. And during hard times, the school was closed, but it was also used again when a public school burned down, and they had to find an area where the children could be taught. And so in 1988, it was moved up here to the museum. Before that, a group of people had tried to keep the building in order so that it would not fall apart. And they had a small group doing that and just couldn't get people to realize that it was very important because they now had new buildings. And so when the museum group started, we were delighted to give it to the museum, and it was restored to its 1908, what shall I say, the building as it was in 1908, with tongue and groove walls, which always fascinate the children when I tell them about those, because they now have Lego blocks, and the tongue and groove boards work like Lego blocks. Also, at the early stages of the school, there was no electricity in Elberta, so I usually take a lamp, a kerosene lamp, and a candle, and a coal oil lamp for the children to see that progress has been made and life was different in the years past. It's amazing how quiet the children are when we have these reports, because they love to hear what it was like when their grandparents lived. The building has relics from many different churches in Baldwin County, and we would urge others to please give us the things of historical value that could be displayed there, because this is not a particular denomination's church now. It is part of the museum, and we would like to have the history of Baldwin County in that museum. There are also a few school relics there, and those also are welcome especially from the age when one-room schools were very popular.
Joe was standing over there just studying that tractor. He said, "Joe, I had one brand new like that, bought it here in Elberta." We had a Moline dealer at that time. And he looked like he wanted to just get on that. I said, "Well, you got to steer it up on the trailer then." So he hopped up there and steered it on. A day or two went by and he says, "You know, Joe, I believe that was my old tractor that I bought from Mr. Morton, who was the dealer at that time." And they took the serial numbers off of it and went home. And there was one number that evidently they couldn't read right, so they claimed it as being one of his first tractors. Turned out that wasn't it, because that wasn't the correct serial number. But anyway, he hopped on that tractor. His son's in the sod business outside of town here, and took it out to his son Paul's farm, and they sandblasted it and painted it, and it runs great. Man, it's on butane gas, and you don't see any of them in here on butane gas. That's the only one. But it runs great. And the John Deere right there, I've forgotten exactly who donated that one, but that one runs good too. We have a gentleman from New York State up in the Finger Lakes area, and he does all of our restoring anything with gas engines on it. That's his hobby. And as we go down the line, back down here, we've got some garden tractors. And there was one there. I said, when they looked at it, I told them, I says, "Bill, you'll never get that thing running." Within an hour, he had it popping like a new one. And then, of course, you know, I get a real kick out of taking the kids through here on tours, and especially that gas pump. Man, they eat that thing up. But those that don't stop at that are already climbing on the Titan tractor. And I tell the people that are with them, they've always got somebody in the group, or maybe two, that's got camera. And over in the other building, they're taking pictures over there, and I told them, I said, "Don't run out of film before you get over to the other building." But when we get them over here, they want to get on that tractor. Well, between me and the chaperones, we put them up on there and they take pictures of them. And they just happy as a pig in the sunshine. And that's one of the things that turns me on. That old Case tractor there, the water pump went bad on it. And it took us about a year to get a water pump for that thing. But it'll crank up and run right now. So will a John Deere. And the Titan will run too, but it takes two tractors, one to help get it started. The big wheel up there, the wide one, fits on the power takeoff pulley on this tractor, and they get it running real fast. And then that little wheel, that's the clutch. And then you have to put your hand up there and screw it in real fast to get the engine to turn over. But we had a real job restoring that tractor. There's a story on that tractor right up there, and it was donated by the Heidelberg family. And it was running a sawmill when we got it, and it didn't have an axle on it, and it was just basically down to nothing. We have a gentleman in Foley by the name of Charles Ebert, and he took it on himself. That was going to be one of his pet projects. And he got the axle, came out of Minnesota, the front axle, and he went and got that axle himself. And it doesn't run but about, top speed is 4 miles per hour. And the steering on it is about, you see the chains underneath? That runs off of a gear up there to the steering wheel. And if you get up there and turn that steering wheel, you don't even think you're turning the wheels, but you are. There's no pressure on it. It's great. And I let the kids, when they're here, if they're big enough, get up there and play with that steering wheel. I said, now turn it to the right or turn it to the left. And boy, they're just having a ball. Another little thing that we have here about blows these kids' mind, and that's that little hog oiler down there. You put oil and stuff like sulfur in it, and the hogs roll over it, and it takes the lice or mites or whatever's on them off. One of my great things about one of our wagons down there, when I was a little bitty fella, my grandmother we lived in Robertsdale. My grandmother had a farm up there, and her husband, he passed away. So my dad went up there. And on Saturday, my grandmother would get that old horse hooked up to that wagon and put all of her eggs and stuff, and she'd take it to Hammond's store in Robertsdale, which was a bartering deal. She'd trade her eggs and milk and that kind of stuff for flour and sugar and whatever. And anyway, we had to cross a creek. And I like to look over there and watch that water come up on. She'd reach over there and grab me by the pants. Get back here, boy. I remember that like if it was yesterday.